Hey everyone, welcome to Youth and Elders Unite for a Fossil-Free Future. This is Clara Vondrich. I am so excited to have an unbelievable roster of guests joining us here today. And I am going to start by letting you guys know why we're here. We know that pension funds around the world control over $46 trillion in assets. That's a lot of money for real people. And currently, because the fossil fuel industry is cratering, we're seeing that pensioners around the world are bearing the brunt. I'm joined here by experts and activists that are working to divest our pensions, both in the United States and Canada. Today, we're announcing the formation of a new coalition for climate-safe pensions, which includes campaigners and campaigns in 12 US states and all around Canada. We're really excited to share the fact that for the first time, youth and elders are coming together to create an unstoppable movement. You might wonder why youth are concerned with pensions. Well, they're savvy and they're smart, and they know that pulling the lever of pension fund money, which is a huge amount, can really make a difference in cutting off the flow of cash to the fossil fuel industry that's not only burning up the planet, but burning up your portfolio. So I'd like to just start with a few housekeeping rules. We're going to have a Q&A at the end of this session, and we want you to all stick around. Also, please stick around for some extra video content that we won't have a chance to plug into the formal program, but we're going to see a really great video from youth at the Divest CalSTRS campaign, which is the campaign to divest one of the biggest pension funds in the country. And we're also going to see a special 15-minute segment that actually aired today on the National Earth Day live stream. But we're going to give you a second chance to check it out in case you missed it. But it also showcases the power and the reach of this growing movement. So we're going to have a three-part session. We're going to start by really digging into sort of the nuts and bolts of why fossil fuels are a terrible investment at this point in time. I'm not sure if you noticed, but fossil fuel stocks aren't doing so hot right now. And if I'm not mistaken, the oil price actually went negative this week. So what does that mean for our pensions and for pension holders around the world? And to get into that, we're going to have Kathy Hipple, who is an expert at the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis, and a huge wealth of information that has been used by campaigners to support their work around the country. And she's going to talk about how why the already strong financial case for divestment has become even stronger. Kathy, over to you.
Thank you, Clara. I will share my screen, and thank you everyone for participating. Let me confirm that I am sharing.
Just while Kathy's getting set up, after we hear from Kathy, we're going to pivot to the youth movement and the grassroots mobilizations that are really breathing new life into the pension campaigns around the country. And then the third section of our program is going to be on innovative tactics in the inside game, talking about how experts on fiduciary duty are helping to make the case with those very serious pension trustees that sometimes have a hard time hearing the truth. And we're also going to dig into legislative efforts around the country that are pushing elected officials to pass bills that would mandate the divestment of fossil fuels by our pensions.
Thank you, Clara. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm here to report that the very already strong case for fossil fuel divestment was strong, but it has grown even stronger. It has grown even stronger in the past month, as you might imagine. So my name is Kathy Hipple. I'm a financial analyst at the Institute for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis. We do reports, it's a team of global experts. We do reports in the United States, Asia, Australia, and South America, South Africa, Europe, and we have a very global perspective. I personally have a background on both Wall Street and Main Street, and I work with a team of experts exploring the energy transition which we believe is well underway. The case for divestment is compelling. A quick overview, and then I'll get into it, is the production of oil and gas is booming. It is still booming. You would think that it would have stopped by now, but that has not been the case. It's been fracking, as you might imagine, which we call hydraulic fracturing, and horizontal wells have allowed this to happen, and that is what has led this boom. But financially, and my analysis will be all of a financial analysis. There are experts who do the environmental analysis and other reasons, but I focus, and the group at IEFA focuses on financial analysis. Financially, the oil and gas sector has been a bust. Oil and gas companies have underperformed the market for a decade. This is not new. The energy sector is shrinking. And today, the oil and gas companies are in extremis. They are in terrible financial shape. So you might not be surprised to think that funds without fossil fuels have outperformed the broader market. You've been better off if your portfolio has not held fossil fuels. Okay, so in March, for those of you who are just emerging from under a rock, the world changed. We became aware that this economic downturn caused by the COVID-19 would lead to huge ramifications in demand for oil and gas. We also had an oil price war between Russia and Saudi Arabia. And this has been called unprecedented. I did a wordle of some headlines for the first 3 months of the year. It's been a disaster for that industry. The industry would like us to believe that this was a black swan event. No one could have predicted it. It came from nowhere. Even the smartest people in the room could never have figured this out. But I'm here to report that this decline began a long time ago. This is not a black swan event. What has happened in the last month or two has accelerated a trend that has been in existence for a full decade, if not longer. In fact, the energy sector, which does not include renewable energy, these are only oil and gas stocks, it's been the worst performing sector over the last decade. In fact, if you can see this line, energy is the red line on the bottom. It has only returned 6% in 10 years compared to IT, which has been up over 300%, and the broader market, the Standard & Poor's 500, which has been up 190%. So that's over 10 years. Let's just look at what's happened over this year. If you look at this blue line at the very bottom, that is the energy sector once again. It's down an astonishing 44% this year alone, and these numbers are through today. Every other sector has performed better than the fossil fuel sector. So one other point to know is that the energy sector retains a lot of political power, but its financial power has really waned. If you look back in December of 1980, oil and gas stocks represented 29% of the market. They now represent 10% of that number. They represent only 2.65% of the broader market, which, as you can see, is a long-term 40-year decline. The oil and gas stocks no longer drive the world economy, and the world economy can grow even if they don't grow on a relative basis. So no surprise here, energy is only 2.6%. No surprise to most of you, it's been IT, healthcare, financials, communication that has grown much faster and now commands a much bigger percentage of the S&P 500. Maybe a different way to look at this is back in 1980, 7 of the top 10 companies in the world were oil and gas companies. This was, of course, before Exxon and Mobil merged. And there were companies like Schlumberger that were one of the 5th biggest company in the world. It's hard to believe. By 2018, only ExxonMobil was one of the top 10. And last year, ExxonMobil in September of 2019 fell out of the top 10. So the top 10 companies no longer are oil and gas companies. And there are in fact only 3 oil and gas companies still in the top 100 S&P 500 companies. So we have a completely different world than we had in 1980. Now, frackers, we call these shale producers or exploration and production companies, have performed especially terribly. And that has what has led the production boom in both oil and gas. And it's the US where most of the fracking has occurred that has really led this incredible production, which has led to a worldwide glut. So it's really happened before the oil price war between Saudi and Russia. This has been a decade-long trend where these fracking-focused companies have been cash flow negative. The bottom line is the business case for fracking has never been proved. Year after year, from 2010 through last year, the companies in aggregate have been negative cash flow. So simply put, the business case for frackers has never been proven. So what happens when you have negative cash flow year after year? No surprise, you end up with a lot of bankruptcies. And over the last few years, there have been more than 200 bankruptcy filings, and over 128 billion in debt has had to be restructured. And last year, 2019, the number of bankruptcies in upstream oil and gas companies doubled. And that was just the beginning, because imagine what's going to happen this year in 2020. So no surprise, if you look at that and you say, well, things are so bad with oil and gas companies, how would funds without fossil fuels have performed compared to funds with fossil fuels? And if you look at the S&P 500, an ETF that tracks that, SPY, versus an ETF that tracks the Standard & Poor's 500 but does not include fossil fuel stocks, you can see over the last 5 years, the funds without fossil fuels have substantially, almost 4 full percentage points, 400 basis points nearly, have outperformed over 5 years. That is a substantial financial outperformance. So anybody who is managing money has to be aware of the substantial outperformance a fund would have without fossil fuels based on the past. So as we all know in the financial world, finance is all about the future. So I will leave you with just one idea, is what does the future hold? We don't know. I mean, obviously, if we knew this for sure, who knows? But what I will say is oil and gas companies face an existential crisis. The decline there in that's a mature industry, it's a secular decline, not a cyclical decline. We don't see them bouncing back. Maybe if you're an oil trader, the prices will go negative and then they'll go positive, but over a long-term trend, they are in decline. So there's a quote I love, which is from an English firm, Redburn. It's an equity research firm. And they wrote a paper last year called Lost in Transition, Oil Majors Lost in Transition. And they had a quote which was, recent precedent shows that when sectors face existential risks, historical multiples provide no floor for share prices. So in plain American English, it means there is no bottom for these companies' stock prices. So we know that this industry is in decline and it's an existential crisis. And what this quote is saying is we don't know where the bottom is. There is no bottom for this. So I will conclude saying the case for divestment has grown even stronger over the past 2 months.
Thanks, Kathy. Thank you so much for that. What's been really amazing to watch for our movement is the fact that the moral case for divestment, which was always foolproof, has now been buttressed by the financial and legal case. These trustees are derogating their legal duty to protect pensioners by holding on to these loser fossil fuel stocks. So the question really becomes, why are they still holding on? And I think part of the reason big institutional investors like pensions, Tom DiNapoli in New York and Simpson in California are holding on is because of the hefty oil price dividend that they're used to getting. But as your work at IEFA has shown, those dividends are soon to be on the chopping block. They're a house of cards that has been held up by borrowing and asset sales, and it's not a sustainable solution. So thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. It's been an enormous boon, like I said, to the movement actors that are working on this day in, day out, because we're able to talk the financial talk, the sophisticated, fiduciary duty and financial case arguments because of your work at IEFA. But still, a lot of that stuff is a little bit rarefied and hard to get our heads around. So now to bring it back down to earth, I want to hear from some sock puppets that are going to tell us about why it's so important for us to get out of stinky stocks. Oh, can't hear the sound.
No.
3, 2, 1.
California teachers, smell your dirty socks. No. That's totally not what you're supposed to say. It's sell your dirty stocks, not smell your dirty socks. Whoa, teachers can't teach with no socks on. And who'd want to buy their stinky socks anyway? They're all online. Nobody sees their feet. For all we know, they're teaching in bunny slippers. Here's what stinks. Pension dollars invested in oil and gas, risking the financial security of hard-working teachers and their students' futures. Oh, man. And it's a good thing you're breathing through a sock, brother, because those dirty investments lead to dirty air. According to the Harvard School of Public Health, fossil fuel pollution increases deaths from COVID-19. How much are we talking about here? We're talking about the second largest pension fund in the whole country. Billions of dollars of these dirty stocks. Got it. Okay, take 2. Suck it to me, baby. California teachers, sell your dirty stocks. Nailed it, didn't I? Good job, huh? Hey, where'd you go?
Thanks, sock puppets. We really appreciate that. So now you've heard it from a financial expert and sock puppets alike. The case for divestment is stronger than ever. It's time to sell those stinky stocks. And now I want to turn us to the youth movement mobilization behind pension divestment, which is growing stronger by the day. Students in California that you're going to hear from in a moment have been working on this for years, trying to divest the CalSTRS public pension fund, one of the biggest in the country. And we have a growing youth movement in other campaigns around the country. You're going to hear from Pradesh Singh of Divest New York. But right now, I want you to see and hear from some of the young people on the front line, starting with this video. Quick backstory, the board of one of the biggest pension funds in the country refused to post youth comments to the public record. So this is one way that the youth struck back. Take a listen.
My message is that we'll be watching you. This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet, it's young people. How dare you?
Excuse me.
You have stolen those things. My childhood with your empty words.
Okay.
Yet, I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales
Thank you for that super powerful piece of performance art by Magdalena of the Divest CalSTRS campaign. You know, it's so inspiring to me to see young people putting their bodies on the line and speaking up for our future. And now we're actually going to hear from Magdalena's brother, Rio, to talk about, you know, how the CalSTRS Divest campaign is taking off and also how young people are driving it. Rio, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Rio. I'm 13, and I'm a co-founder of the Bay Area Earth Guardians crew. What you just saw was my sister doing a disruption in a CalSTRS board meeting. You may wonder why we've been doing, why we did that, and this is why. So for about a year now, we've been attending CalSTRS board meetings, asking them to divest. CalSTRS is a government agency that invests $6 billion in fossil fuels. And so we've been going to every single one of their meetings and asking that they divest. They've been censoring us, turning off the live stream, and so we were really frustrated. In the beginning, we partnered with Fossil Free California, which is they've been trying to get CalSTRS to divest for 5 years before we showed up. And then we also partnered with Youth versus Apocalypse, which is a dynamic group of youth that are experiencing environmental racism on a day-to-day basis. And as you see, like, I never expected to be doing this. My sister, some of the kids in the back are as young as 9. Like, we had no idea we were going to be doing this. But, yeah, this is some people from a school that joined, and Youth versus Apocalypse members as some of our people. And divestment is just like a dynamite way to have direct action against the fossil fuel industry. And the reason I'm doing this is because we have so little time, and I'm scared. We have so little time to save millions of innocent lives. And the reason I believe you should get involved is, as you can see, with the COVID-19, we need everybody's help to stop this. And so we're asking you, regardless of your age, it would be amazing if you could join in some way. Go see Fossil Free California's page, join Earth Guardians, anything you can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rio. It's so inspiring. We're so grateful for your work. Really, really keep it up and let us know how we can help. The Coalition for Climate Safe Pensions that's just getting kicked off is going to prioritize youth and vulnerable community voices. And so we are really just honored to have you here today. Before we move on to our next youth activist, I just wanted to remind everyone to please visit climatesafepensions.org and sign our petition that goes out to state controllers, governors, treasurers all around the country, calling on them to divest now. And you can also visit shiftaction.ca in Canada to see how you can help with those fights there. So please, please take these URLs down, visit climatesafepensions.org and shiftaction.ca to join us. Now we're going to turn to my good friend Hridesh Singh from New York, up in Rochester, who's been a super strong ally of the Divest New York campaign that's been going on for almost 8 years now. I remember back in 2013, a bunch of us delivered 11,000 petitions to Comptroller DiNapoli, who's the sole trustee of this massive $200+ billion pension fund, calling on him to divest. And there's been a lot of progress along the way. We haven't quite crossed the finish line, but Hridesh is going to give us an update on the campaign and where we are today.
Definitely. Well, thank you again so much for that introduction. And I would like to just first lead off that this campaign is really close to the finish line, as you said. Currently, right now, we've been focusing more on a legislative route to divest the CABA Retirement Fund, our state's public pension fund for public workers in our state. Comptroller DiNapoli, as you referenced, is the sole trustee of that fund, yet he continues to oppose divestment, pushing for shareholder advocacy instead, trying to work with fossil fuel companies to transition away from their business model. However, for the past decade, that has pretty much yielded no dividends whatsoever. Hence, we're going forward with a more legislative route. And the Fossil Fuel Divestment Act, the act that we've been pushing for, currently has a majority of co-sponsors in the state Senate with 33, and we have 50 assembly members in the lower house co-sponsoring the bill, which accounts to about a third of the entire lower house. So this campaign is clearly on the verge of success. It's been almost nearly a decade in the making, and we are really, really excited to finally divest New York. My group, the New York Youth Climate Leaders, recently just got involved with the Divest New York Coalition about 6 months ago when we met at a climate solutions summit in SUNY New Paltz. And after hearing about the number of pensioners as well as other adult activists spending years and years on this divestment to not only protect the future generations to come, but also their pensions itself, we felt really inspired, and we felt that this is a great way not only to get involved to advance climate justice, but really make an impactful change in our state. So since then, we've worked with the Divest New York Coalition to host a variety of different lobby meetings, virtual lobby meetings, in-person lobby meetings, strikes, to continue pushing the ball forward to achieving divestment in our state. And actually just 2 days ago, our coalition worked with the Divest New York Coalition to host a virtual youth-led lobby day where we had over 200 participants from across the state meet with over 40 state representatives via Zoom to encourage them to sponsor the Fossil Fuel Divestment Act. And from that day, we're hoping to get a couple more sponsors this end of this week and early next week to finally divest our state away from the fossil fuel industry. So if you want to get more involved, feel free to visit divestnewyork.org, or you can check us out on social media, NY2CL on Instagram and Facebook, or NY Youth Climate on Twitter.
Thank you so much, Hridesh. I just have to say that when I was your age, I still didn't know what a pension was. So the fact that you're bought in, you get this stuff, hats off to you, and you make me hopeful for the future. So now I'd like to pivot and talk a little bit about the other progress that's happening all around the country and in Canada. So we've heard from California, we've heard from New York. Those are the biggest pots of money we have in public pensions in the States. But now let's take a little trip to Massachusetts and hear from Randy Mail to learn what they're up to at Mass Divest. You're muted, Randy.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great.
Loud and clear.
So thanks, everyone. So my name is Randy Mail. I am a volunteer with the Mass Divest Coalition, a statewide coalition working to divest pension funds from fossil fuels. And I'm really excited to work on fossil fuel divestment because I think it's an effective solution in the climate fight, particularly because it's the largest category of money in the world. You know, I want to know that my pension is divested, and I want to help ensure pension security for over 100,000 of us in Massachusetts who have dedicated years of our lives as public servants. With divestment, I feel like I can have an even greater impact with my work and activism. As recycling director in Cambridge, Mass for many years, I was proud to establish curbside composting citywide. But in 2017, I had a real aha moment. This was when Rex Tillerson, the CEO of ExxonMobil, was appointed Secretary of State. That really shocked me. And I realized why. It was because the phrase "follow the money" was flashing in my mind. So for Mass Divest local campaign, we've done a lot of cool stuff. In recent years, our grassroots team in Somerville educated the retirement board, who's now convinced that divestment is the right thing to do financially. We've filed legislation, held lobby days too. We've worked on municipal resolutions to get support, held briefings, held hearing testimony, and did a study recently that measures the financial returns of fossil fuel divestment. So right now we have this local option bill that authorizes independent retirement systems to divest from fossil fuels if they choose to. And we have legislators from every county supporting this bill. Together, over 80 legislators represent 60% of the 104 retirement systems that we have statewide. So far, the bill has moved through 2 committees out of 3. So we hope this year it will pass the House, the Senate, and the governor signs it into law. So our bill was endorsed by several public sector unions and major climate groups as well. Nearly a dozen communities passed a council resolution in support of fossil fuel divestment, and many universities and foundations have divested, including UMass, which in 2016 became the first major public university to fully divest.
16.
And we've also made some really cool videos to educate people. The first one that you can look up later is of Tom Sanzillo, also from my IFA, who works with Kathy Hipple. He came to Massachusetts to advocate for our bill, and he makes the great point that the question isn't whether to divest or not, but the question is, why are we still invested in fossil fuels? The second link features David O'Donnell from the Massachusetts Petroleum Council, who was the only person to testify against our bill. 2 legislators on the committee told him point blank that what he said didn't resonate with them one bit. Also today, we sent a video that we made that was an industry and legislative briefing and emailed it to over 100 pension directors across the state just this morning. So we'd love your help educating your local retirement board in Massachusetts. Please join us. If you live in Massachusetts and want Massachusetts pensions to be climate safe, get in touch with us. Here's our information. We're at massdivest.org, and we meet on Thursday nights on Zoom. Thank you so much, and I'm going to pass the baton.
I'll pick it back up, Randy.
Okay.
Thank you so much. It's just unbelievable to me to see the innovative tactics that people are using. I mean, this is such a sophisticated and growing campaign. It's not just about, you know, protests in front of Tom DiNapoli's office or, you know, showing up and crashing board meetings. It's about collecting the financial analysis, bringing it to trustees, and making sure that they know that the case for fossil fuels is long gone. It's hard to know why they're still invested, and we're going to keep doing everything that we can to make sure they get the message. So much of it has to do with inertia. These are status quoticians who have been doing things the same way for a long time, and we're here to shake it up and let them know that the growth industries of the future are in renewable energy, clean tech jobs, technology in general. They're not in the dying fossil fuel industry. So thank you for that message from Massachusetts. So now let's see, we've gone to California, New York, Massachusetts. Why don't we take a spin up north right now, journey up northwards, and visit our good friends in Canada. Adam Scott at Shift, please give us an update from the hinterlands.
Hey everyone, great to be here. I'm Adam. I'm the director of a project called Shift, Action for Pension Wealth and Planet Health, way up here in Canada. And my colleague Patrick's also here moderating questions on the line. And I'm a former youth climate activist that's grown up. So I'm really excited to get to see the amazing activism that's still happening and growing every day. So it gives me huge inspiration. So I'm speaking to you from Toronto, part of the traditional territory of several Indigenous nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people. And I want to say quickly, you know, Canada is home to some massive and very influential pension funds. The 10 largest in Canada that we target manage over $1.5 trillion in Canadian retirement savings. That's still more than $1 trillion in US money. And all Canadians are part of at least one pension fund. So these are huge, influential and international asset managers, and they really are the dominant force in the financial sector here in Canada. So Shift is a project that works to help pension beneficiaries, actual workers who've been saving all these years, to engage with their fund managers directly through letters, through meetings, through media and other tactics. And we help folks to call on their pensions to get their investments out of dirty fossil fuels and shift that money into climate solutions. And this is, of course, essential for avoiding the worst impacts of the climate crisis, but it's critical to making sure that these funds are actually able to pay out those pensions down the line. If we don't deal with the climate crisis, there won't be a safe planet, and there won't be pensions to pay out. This is a really heavy lift in Canada. Canada's a very oily place, as you may know. We're the world's 4th largest producer of fossil fuels, of oil. And Canada's financial sector is deeply entangled with oil and gas companies. So not one of Canada's major public pension funds has committed to divestment or even put any kind of screen on oil and gas to date. But the momentum is really growing quickly in the last while. You know, the massive global climate movement is really putting the pressure on right now. And as everything Kathy said at the beginning about what's happening in the fossil fuel industry, we're seeing the convergence of a lot of forces right now. And as others have covered so well, pension plans have a legal fiduciary responsibility to invest in the best long-term interest of the beneficiaries. And if we actually think that route forces the pensions to act, because somebody who's just starting out now, who's just starting to pay into their pension, has no guarantee that they're going to actually be able to see their pension at the end of their career if we don't deal with climate change. So yeah, SHIFT works by putting pressure on the funds, working with labor unions, directly with workers like teachers, nurses, city workers, all sorts of workers, and younger activists, and those who are retired, to talk to their fund managers directly. So we provide knowledge and the tools and the strategy, but the power comes from the beneficiaries themselves, and that's really important. And we're seeing a huge number of Canadians who are stepping in to call for action. So we're really excited at the moment. So just really excited to be part of this rapidly growing movement, and to be on this call with all of you across North America. So if you're in Canada, or you know somebody who's in Canada who's looking to make a big move on climate change, we really advocate pushing your pension. We think that's a really important tactic to get involved. You can go to our website at shiftaction.ca, or you can go to shiftyourpension.ca, and we have an action tool there. You can get started right away. So thanks so much for having us.
Thanks, Adam. I'm really sorry not to see Morgan, your beautiful 2-month baby, on the screen today. If you could bring her in for a cameo, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But you know, what you said was really important. The pensioner is paying in now, today, the younger generation, they may not have a pension in 30, 40 years when they're supposed to collect. And that's why Mark McVeigh, my friend in Australia, has actually launched the first litigation against his pension fund for failing to consider their climate risk and the threat to his nest egg when it comes due for him in 20 years. So thanks for bringing that up. You know, one of the trustee duties is to have a duty of impartiality. And clearly, by investing in fossil fuels right now, they're prioritizing the retirees today over those that are to come. So thank you for bringing that up. Now I want to pivot to our good friend, Dr. Maria. We know that we can't do this work without our elders and our healers. I personally became involved in this work because I was baptized Catholic, but didn't really go to those churches. But whenever I was in nature, that's when I felt God. And I think to bring us back to earth, I'd like to transition now to Dr. Maria, who will share a little bit about how we need to pay attention to Mother Earth and her wisdom. Dr. Maria?
Thank you. Wopila Tanka. We want to say thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to all of you. We need to understand that, as Chief Seattle said, we do not borrow. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow the land from the youth. It is our responsibility as an elder so that everyone may have land and clean water and places to swim and have food and water and shelter that can still be eaten for the next 49 generations. We've been a wisdom keeper and an earth keeper from very young. And when we were in California, we were able to work with Indivisible and 350 so that they divested their money from their cities, which were billions and billions of dollars. This is easy with the pensions because it doesn't have as much infrastructure, but the pensions are really important. Our earth is important. The earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. It is our responsibility as not only Indigenous elders, but all of us at one time were Indigenous. We were all part of living off the land. And we have, for many reasons with technology, forgotten about that connection. but Grandmother Earth is asking. She's showing us through climate changes that she is hurting, that we are hurting her. And it is our responsibility to stop the hurt and to change the things that are creating the hurt. It is our place as not only indigenous people, but all humankind to come together as one family of living beings so that the winged ones and the creepy crawlers and the ones that swim in the water and the ones, the four-leggeds that walk on the earth, that we all come together with the Standstill Nation and the Stone Nation and the Sacred Fire and all the elements, that we all work together so that all living beings can live on this planet in reverence and respect. This land is not ours. It's only gifted to us for a period of time while we live here. And it is our duty to respect Grandmother Earth and all that she gives us. She gives us limitlessly. That is the least that we can do, is match her in limitlessly working as hard as we can. And we are so impressed and our prayers are so amplified listening to everything that's being done all over this country and all over this world and all over Canada to try to get these pension funds to reinvest. They are all losing money with fossil fuels. So we're trying to change this paradigm from one of power and greed to one of peace and prayer and love. How imaginably wonderful that could be if we could all work together in that way. So we ask you to join in that way to change the world and keep Grandmother Earth safe for the next 49 generations. Aho, Dakiase. We're all related.
Thank you, Dr. Maria, for those moving words. Yeah, the reason we got into this mess in the first place is because we ignored the wisdom of the elders and the wisdom of the native peoples that know how to be stewards of the earth and care for it. And today, the COVID crisis is unfortunately showing us what happens when we ignore the signals. And hopefully, we can still get back on track and we're actually having a moment to let nature heal during this time that people stop flying and stop driving. So let's not return to business as usual when this is all over. Let's remember the wisdom of the elders and our indigenous peoples around the world that have told us to slow down from the very beginning. So now we're going to pivot back and talk a little bit about divestment tactics. We know that they range from grassroots mobilizations that we've discussed already, but they also go into important insider strategies that focus on legislation and fiduciary duty. Please, again, don't forget to visit climatesafepensions.org to sign our petition. But now we're so honored to have California State Senator Ben Allen, who is going to talk about pivotal legislation he helped pass in California that holds trustees to account on reporting out on climate risk and ultimately will move the needle so that they do divest. So Senator Allen, so pleased to have you. Take it away.
Well, thank you, everybody, and it's happy 50th anniversary of Earth Week. It's such a strange way to celebrate it, and I know we would all be out marching together, celebrating the accomplishments of the past 50 years. Obviously, this is a different way to do it, but as you correctly mentioned, the Earth is taking a moment right now to heal. There's a lot of downsides to this current crisis. There are people in incredible pain, both medically and financially, and we have to, we can't lose sight of that. But there's also some silver linings here. And I guess one of the questions is, how do we emerge from this whole crisis with a newfound appreciation for what we need to do to heal our Earth and maintain the momentum that we currently have in terms of clean air and biodiversity and everything else. It is a strange moment, but I will say that it does prove that as dysfunctional a species as we are, we really can come together to do great things when necessary, when we are really being challenged. And I think you're seeing that right now in the way that we're responding to this crisis. We're staying at home, and actually, it's pretty amazing what we've been able to do so far. I remember when we first went on to recess as a legislature and we were poring over all the data, we were very, very frightened about what might happen in California. And we had numbers that were predicting very significant numbers of deaths, a total overwhelming of our ICU system and our healthcare infrastructure. And obviously those are things that have happened in other places. But coming together, we were able to take collective action and slow down the curve, basically flatten the curve. And we're now at a place where we're not looking at anything close to the kinds of casualties that had been predicted earlier. It's of course, the crazy thing is, if you think about it, climate change is a much more existential threat than COVID for the human species, for our entire planet. And actually, the kinds of things that we're going to have to do to combat climate change involve much less impactful, much less of an impact on our own quality of life. It's just about shifting our lifestyle choices to more sustainable options. It's about getting around in zero emissions vehicles instead of polluting cars. It's about trying to lower our carbon footprint and trying to buy more local and trying to trying to put in place more sustainable practices on a lot of different levels. But these are all things that we know we can do. Energy in terms of our energy procurement as well. These are all things we have the technology for. It doesn't involve everyone having to stay at home, living on top of their families for weeks and weeks on end. It actually involves just switching over to technologies that already exist, that actually won't involve a significant change in quality of life. And so I hope that we can take this moment to come together and make these changes. They are significant changes, and they're not always going to be easy, but they're certainly a lot easier than the changes that we're imposing upon ourselves right now to address a truly existential threat for our species, for our planet. I obviously, we're proud of the work we've done in California, but also the partnership that we've been able to build with friends from Native communities, from friends all over the world, in Canada and elsewhere. And I guess I wanted to just take a moment to talk about something that I worked on with a number of people who were on this call to address one aspect of this whole issue. Obviously, we've been talking about the impact of climate change on pension funds. And a couple of years ago, we did a bill together. It was my bill, but it was truly a group effort. It was SB 964 in the state legislature that requires our two big pension funds, CalSTRS and CalPERS, which are two of the largest in the world, to disclose the risk that climate change poses to the value of their fund assets, and to consider that risk when making investments. And really, for the first time, it forced them to take a long, hard look at the kind of data that was presented earlier. For them to really grapple with the risks involved, the real financial risks, because of all the stranded assets, because of some of the regulatory things coming down the pike, some of the physical vulnerabilities that a lot of these companies have as a result of climate change. And it really started to make some waves. I mean, it was an important thing. There was a big piece about it in the Los Angeles Times, and got a lot of people talking that I'm really happy about. I know, we were a little disappointed that their analysis didn't quite go as far as we wanted it to. They skirted around the detail in some respects, even though there was a lot of good information there. But the good thing is that some of the good progressive people on the board, and this is the nice thing about being in California, we can elect some forward-thinking people in our jurisdiction, which is something that folks in other areas have struggled with, because we got to work on that. That's going to be one of our big tasks this November. But some of the members of the board who were able to ask really tough questions, dig down and say, this is inadequate. You need to comply with the law, the letter of the law, which asks you to really do a deep dive and looking at the climate implications and all the financial and all the risks associated with climate change. And really, they're going to have to come back to the board, to both boards actually, with a new set of standards to really get to what we were seeking to get to, and that I know that so many of the activists are seeking to get to. And so I'm certainly really happy about that. I think that those members of the board were buoyed and encouraged and pushed by the activists who have been tireless in so many ways, in ways that I can't even underscore to you how helpful that is. I mean, legislators are running around like headless chickens. I mean, every day we're working on 20 million different issues. Today alone, I was talking about labor issues and education and our nonprofit sector and the banking sector. I mean, this is just in the last 3 hours. Those are the issues I've worked on. So, what we need, you guys are helping us to remain focused. You're going to remain keeping us accountable and keeping the board members accountable too. And so, this bill was obviously just one small step in a larger march toward climate justice that all of us are participating in. But, we certainly recognize how important it is, particularly in a state and an economy as large as California is. now more than ever, as we're fighting together, as we're really fighting together to stave off another major public health crisis. And let's not forget, the worst impacts have been in those areas where there's been the worst air pollution and the worst, because there's such a tight respiratory connection. So the irony is not lost on me that the Trump administration is using this as an opportunity to try to roll back certain air quality standards. But as we're fighting off COVID, we can't forget about the other crisis that's staring us down in terms of climate change. I know none of you are forgetting about it. We now see the cost of not being prepared for a crisis. This was staring us in the face for several months, in some respects, several years. Climate change has been staring us in the face for several decades. Shame on us if we're not able to learn the lessons from this current crisis, and let's not repeat the same mistakes we've made. Thank you, everyone, for your activism and your advocacy and your doggedness, and let's all stay safe out there.
Thank you so much, Senator Allen. I really appreciate you highlighting the fact that we're so powerful together. When the activists and the progressive legislators come together and we, talk about solutions that energize and inspire, we're really onto something. And I love what you said about how, it's not that big of a shift. We have the renewable energy technologies that we need in order to chart a better day. However, we still face the very powerful and entrenched fossil fuel industry that stands in the way left and right. And, Drew Faust from Harvard, which has still not divested, used to say divestment would be a drop in the bucket. It wouldn't really make a difference because we're still flying, we're still driving. But that's just the ultimate passing of the buck. We know that if we go to the heart of the financial industry sector and we start to move the money, that can make a huge difference. So thank you for those very important points. And also thanks for bringing it, connecting us to the current moment, the COVID crisis. I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Like you said, there are two existential crises that there's a lot of opportunity to merge the solution sets in order to address both. So thank you for that broader perspective.
Yep.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're going to get a little bit more wonky. We're going to pass it on to Stephen Feit from the Center for International Environmental Law, who is an attorney who's been working deep in the weeds on this issue of fiduciary duty. And as we know, this is one of the skirts that pension trustees like to hide behind. We can't divest because that would violate our fiduciary duty. What is fiduciary duty? So Stephen, take it away. Let us understand from a pretty layman's perspective what fiduciary duty is and why it matters.
Thank you so much, Clara. And we are about to transition from an inspiring speech into a bit of a law lecture, so my apologies in advance that my presentation is quite full of text. But so the engine here, the key driver of pension fund behavior is fiduciary duty. It is the thing that guides the actions of the trustees as well as the investment consultants and advisors that are brought in and who guide the decisions and the financial allocations of pensions. And in a nutshell, put simply, fiduciary duty requires trustees and other fiduciaries to be careful, to do a really expert job, and to act solely in the interests of their beneficiaries. The specific definition is here. Fiduciaries shall discharge their duties with respect to the pension system with the care, skill, prudence, and diligence under the circumstances then prevailing that a prudent person acting in a like capacity and familiar with these matters would use in the conduct of an enterprise of a like character and with like aims. But essentially, they have to be careful, they have to do an expert job, and they have to work solely in the interests of their beneficiaries. And this connects quite directly to the issue of climate change and climate-related financial risk. As Senator Allen described, SB 964 was the first bill to put this concept of climate-related financial risk into the law. Oh, sorry, I skipped a slide. In addition to the general definition of fiduciary duty, it is subdivided into specific delineated duties. Each of these themselves have their own requirements and standards. So there is quite a bit of specificity, but the core concept is quite simple. So SB 964 enshrined in law a definition of climate-related financial risk, which means the risk that may include material financial risk posed to a fund by the effects of a changing climate and other financial and transition risks. The full definition is longer, but for now, we'll keep it short. And the importance of this is really quite central. Pension fiduciaries have an obligation to consider all material financial risks. Climate-related financial risk is a material financial risk, which is to say that SB 964 just codified a thing that existed beforehand and continues to exist now. But it required the funds to analyze these risks and to publish on them, which at the end of last year, they did. Both CalPERS and CalSTRS released their reports as required by SB 964. And as we have discussed, we could say they came up short. I think the best metaphor that we've been able to come up with is, if you imagine a dangerous road that you want someone to try to fix, and you say, okay, please tell me how you're going to fix it. And they say to you, oh, we agree with you that the road, but we're not going to point out to you which potholes we're going to fix and which curves we're going to put protective guardrails on. That is unfortunately what we got from these pension funds. So it was very much a step in the right direction, but it did not go far enough. And also, why does this matter? There's a lot of money at stake, and fiduciary duties are legal duties, and violating them carries with it the consequences of violating legal obligations. Again, there's a lot of specificity in these rules, but there's also a lot of simplicity. The elements of a claim for a breach of fiduciary duty are just alleging the existence of the fiduciary duty, a breach of that duty, and damages proximately caused by that breach. So in the event that pension trustees or other fiduciaries are aware of climate-related financial risk and don't take the proper actions to monitor that risk and to allocate their investments in a way to protect their funds from those risks, they risk causing damage to their funds, they risk the pensions of their beneficiaries, and ultimately they risk legal liability if they violated those duties. And I will stop there. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, the fiduciary duty thing is so crazy because that's the argument all of them throw back in our faces. But now with your help and with the tools in your tool belt, we have a chance to fight back. And I think even more simply, it's this idea that they have a duty not to invest in a dying sector, right? They always talk about how we have to maximally diversify our portfolio because of modern portfolio theory. Last time I checked, you didn't have a duty to divest in a crappy stock. And so I think we just have to keep on hammering this home. The law is on our side, and the fiduciary duty piece is also critical because it's a hook for us to bring litigation. So I know we're going to be talking about that soon, and I look forward to bringing the first ever US case against a pension for violating its fiduciary duty by ignoring climate change. But that's the next call. Okay, so let's move on now. I know we're kind of short on time. Thanks for bearing with us, but this content is so great. I wish we had 4 hours. Next, I want to turn to Gina Penn-Tracy. She's active with the Divest Minnesota campaign, and she's also a financial advisor whose clients have all divested. I would love to hear from you how you got them across that hump, Gina, and any efforts you want to share about Minnesota.
Yeah, hi. Well, they saved the lawyer and the financial advisor for last, so we're going to be the dorks in the room. I also am going to share some slides. I have been a financial advisor for about 20 years, and let me get on full screen here. There we go. And I have been working with MN 350 and Divest Invest Minnesota as a consultant for probably the past 6 or 7 years. And I just need to say out front, I own Centered Wealth. I'm an investment advisor, but I'm speaking as a private concerned citizen and not as an investment advisor, and nothing I say should be taken personally to your own investments. We'll get that legal piece out of the way. I just want to walk through kind of the movement of the Minnesota Divestment Coalition and how we've shifted from a mostly ethical argument into a fiduciary argument. And in about 2014, we had after a number of years of working with the SBI, Minnesota State Board of Investments, to request them to divest and getting a lot of pushback, we requested that they at least start doing shareholder advocacy. If they weren't going to divest, at least be actively engaged. And so a couple of years later, 2016, they took that on as one of their mandates and really have made that the primary focus of their climate activism has been through shareholder advocacy, which we feel is it's very useful in certain industries for carbon divestment of certain industries. So say you're talking to Dow Chemical and you want Dow Chemical to produce chemicals that aren't petroleum based. Engaging with Dow Chemical in that regard could be really useful. But with the large Carbon 200 holding companies, which Carbon Underground 200 companies means that those companies, their valuation is based on the oil or gas that they have in their asset base. So whatever they're holding underground, they put a valuation on that. That gives their company valuation. So if they were suddenly to say, we're not going to take that carbon out of the ground, their company value goes down instantly. So in 2017, we tried to go to the state pension group, the investment group for the state pensions, and offer a carbon divested fund to the directly to the 401 or 403B, 401Ks for our state employees. We were told that the only option would be for those employees to go use the self-directed option, which is much more expensive, it's much more cumbersome. So we regrouped. 2018, we really shifted our focus to a fiduciary argument. Part of the reason we did that is that it was becoming more and more clear that, like was said earlier by Kathy, carbon assets are underperforming, energy stocks are underperforming, they've been consistently underperforming for an extended period of time. So the fiduciary argument has become stronger. 2019, we introduced 2 different bills to the state legislature. We met with the Legislative Commission on Pensions and Retirement. That was very disappointing. I was speaking and Republican members of the commission were getting up and leaving the room and talking over the top of me. So I think we can't underestimate the power of the political dynamic in this regard. We started meeting with the State Board of Investment board members, talking specifically about the fiduciary concerns. And that got some results. So we started to see a response by the State Board of Investments. They released a climate risk discussion paper. It really detailed the risks of carbon investments, but relied very much on the fund managers themselves to say, yes, we're assessing these risks. There was no measurement device, there was no oversight mechanism. The State Board of Investments adopted an ESG policy earlier this year that included the commitment to assess climate risk, but there were also no measurements to that. So we're thinking that we're going to have to circle back with the legislature and get more clarity about what those 2 things mean. When we're talking about fiduciary risks, Kathy's going to see some of her work in this because I've relied on the AIFA research. But the biggest risks we see are transition risk, which means that in an increasing climate of climate disasters, we're going to see growing public concern, and governments, the easiest way for them to shift is going to be through carbon tax or cap and trade regulation, which is going to impact the industry quickly and pretty aggressively. The stranded asset risk, which is what I was talking about when the Carbon Underground 200 have those assets underground and they really can't release all of that carbon into the environment. That's going to be a risk to their valuation. Litigation risk. So just like big tobacco companies got attacked by states and local governments for the cost that they were incurring for tobacco, we're also going to see that happen with national and local governments when they are having to foot the bill for climate disasters. Divestment risk, it's basic numbers. The fewer buyers you have for a stock, the more that stock goes down. We're also seeing that with lending right now, especially in the fracking industry. There's not enough lending to go around for small companies that are frackers, and they're having to go bankrupt because they can't get their credit extended. Pricing risk basically means what we're seeing right now. In the end of a cycle of a market, the different actors and players are going to start to behave erratically. So just like we're seeing Russia and Saudi Arabia decide that they're going to glut the market and drive the price down because that will drive their competition out of business, we're going to get more and more erratic behavior at the end of this as this industry starts to fail. The other thing that's happening for pricing is we have renewable energy prices going down, and that's getting more affordable. So all of this leads to an issue of fiduciary neglect. Comparing this to the mortgage crisis, prior to the mortgage crisis, mortgages were looked at in their historical context. They had always been performing a certain way. The fiduciaries that were evaluating those mortgages weren't looking at the increasing risk in that market over a short period of time. We're seeing the same thing with fiduciaries right now. They're not accurately assessing the risks because they're looking back 20, 30, 40 years of energy historical performance, and they're not looking at the current market risk. So the other things we want to keep in mind is fiduciaries primarily have a duty of care. And I try to remind activists that I interact with that most fiduciaries, especially those that are working in governmental and educational sectors, could be making a lot more money doing what they're doing in the private sector, and that they are doing this because they deeply care about the people that they're serving. And so speaking to them from a point of view of, I know you care. I know you care about the pension holders that you are serving. I know you care about the institution that you're serving, and you need to broaden your focus to look at these other risks. Fiduciaries need a really solid financial argument. We need to give them the research, the background, the materials so that they can make that financial argument. And then often they need the legislative mandate because of the political and ideological opposition that they face. The research is out there. There's really good research on how do you divest. The CFA Institute, the Chartered Financial Analyst Institute, is a really good source of some of that basic research. The IEFA that you heard from earlier is a really good source of research. And the other thing I want to add is passive investing has become very, very in vogue, and that means that you just ride along with the index. You don't put any sort of parameters on that. And from my perspective, that has its own fiduciary risk because you're basically not looking at the individual risk of the investments that you're holding. Your primary objective is to keep the internal costs low and normalize the returns to market returns. And it also means that you're going to go off the cliff when a certain sector goes off the cliff like we're seeing right now.
Thank you so much, Gina. That's amazing. We're just running out of time. So
Sorry,
no worries. No, that was great. No, and you've hit on something so important, which is this distinction between divestment and shareholder advocacy. So many of the trustees throw back in our face this idea, oh no, we've got to engage with the companies to transition them to the clean energy future. But last time I checked, ExxonMobil isn't going to become a solar company. And I want you all to stick around. Rio and Earth Guardians have a great video that shows the youth perspective on that and really breaks down Gina's great points in a little bit softer language. But it was fantastic. And so please also chat your questions into the Facebook Live Q&A. We're going to hit those real soon. But last but not least, we have a Colorado State pension union member, and also active member of Colorado Divest. Her name is Bobby Mooney, and she's going to share some of her work. And also, Bobby, if you wouldn't mind, one of the most important things that we're going to be working on right now is galvanizing pension members. It's one thing to have activists and youth and others outside of the system calling for change, but we really need to wake people up, the pensioners themselves, to the risk that they're facing. So let me know how you're addressing that, and if you've got any tips for us before we turn to Q&A. Thanks.
Sure, thank you. So yeah, my name is Bobby Mooney in Denver, Colorado here. And I was a founding board member of 350 Colorado, and I currently serve as the board president of 350 Colorado Action that we founded in 2017. And because I am a state employee, I'm a member of the Colorado Public Employees Retirement Association, or PARA, which manages the pensions of about 500,000 current and former public employees here in Colorado. And I'll be retiring hopefully in around the 2050s. So I've been asking PARA about fossil fuel divestment for years now. At least 3 years I've been in contact with them. And now more recently, I'm actually serving as a spokesperson for the Fossil Free PARA Coalition here in Colorado. So I periodically write to PARA, and I show up at board meetings to give public comments along with other members of PARA. And so, you know, they get to see me a lot. They really love seeing me at their meetings, I know. And so last year in January 2019, the PARA trustees adopted a statement on divestment. This policy says that PARA will oppose divestment efforts unless such opposition is inconsistent with its fiduciary duty, but will implement divestment mandates passed by the Colorado General Assembly. So of course, we see a couple of issues with this policy, with this statement, but basically that is their position for now. They continue to tell us that they will not divest without legislation that will make them do it. So in March of 2019, the coalition worked with Colorado State Representative Emily Sirota, who introduced House Bill 1270, which directed PARA to hire an independent firm to assess its portfolio's climate-related financial risk. Now, unfortunately, this bill didn't make it out of committee, so it wasn't considered by the whole legislature. But in the fall of last year, we went ahead and did a study anyway. The Fossil Fuel Free PARA Coalition raised funds to commission the study. We paid corporate knights to conduct the study, which found that PARA, if it had divested from fossil fuel stocks 10 years ago, Colorado's $45 billion state pension fund would have generated an estimated additional $1.77 billion extra dollars in value. So that works out to an opportunity cost for every PARA member like me of about $2,900, and that's just for that 10-year period. So we presented that study to PARA, of course, in November, but surprise, surprise, still no movement from them. So that brings us to the 2020 legislative session. Again, working with State Rep Emily Sirota, we were focused on originally a bill that would mandate PARA divest from coal, just focusing on coal to begin with. But Rep Sirota was more interested in divesting from all fossil fuels, which is awesome. And then we even tossed around the idea of maybe running 2 bills this year, one just focused on coal and one on all fossil fuels. The idea being that maybe with 2 bills on the plate, that at least the coal bill might pass as seemingly the more moderate or middle of the road kind of option. But ultimately we coalesced around a single bill that would mandate PARA divestment from all fossil fuel investments over a 5-year period, with coal divestment as the first step in the next 1 or 2 years. So this bill would have been released in March of this year, but of course, unfortunately, it's now delayed due to COVID-19. And unfortunately, we don't expect this bill to be a priority for the legislature when and if the session resumes this year, but we're definitely planning to continue the push in 2021 and beyond as needed, however long it takes, because we're really fighting for current and future retirees like myself and everyone impacted by the climate crisis. So we're building momentum. We're trying to pull in, like you said, more members of PARA to get involved in this campaign. And one of the most effective tools we found so far is an online petition that we can send out to petition to both members and other supporters. And that helps us collect contact information for members of PARA, and we can help bring them into the movement, get them involved, get them to come to board meetings and speak and write directly to the Board of Trustees. So with that, I believe that is all for the update from Colorado right now, but I look forward to any questions anyone has. Thank you.
Thanks, Bobby. I, again, am so struck by the level of sophistication of the different tactics that we're all using. And this is really the secret of our movement, is that we're hardcore climate activists, but we have the education and the analysis at our fingertips because of folks like Kathy, Tom Sanzillo, Stephen Feit, Carol Muffett. And so working together, it's that special secret sauce that's going to really start to shake things up. So what I gather from all this is that the fiduciary duty of pension funds really boils down to one thing: stop investing in a dying industry. So let's keep hammering that home. Now I'd like to turn to our audience for some questions. I know we've got some good ones lined up that Patrick's about to share. And then I just wanted to say, again, this is a growing global movement. We're just starting off here in North America, United States and Canada, 12 state campaigns, a lot more happening in Canada, but this is gonna be worldwide, y'all. The fiduciary duty, the political context for all these fights is a little different, but the fiduciary duty to stop losing money for pensioners is the same. So let's really start telling the story and bringing other people into the fold. And again, visit climatesafepensions.org to sign our petition, and also shiftcanada.ca to get involved with your Canadian friends. So Patrick, do you mind fielding some of our questions for the audience, for the panelists now?
Sure, I can get to a few and try to combine a few that are similar. The first one is for Kathy Hipple, but the other panelists can feel free to answer as well. And that's, what would you say to someone who says, now's the time to buy low and sell high? We're seeing fossil fuels tanking, so why not buy now and then sell and maximize returns in the future?
It's a great question that I would say, if you want to be an oil trader, personally, I don't want my retirement funds to be invested with an oil trader. Some of the people who were trading oil last week, in fact, earlier this week, had to pay negative prices for oil. So oil trading is essentially very, very risky. And the idea of catching and trying to predict the bottom and to trade, I think we ask our pension fund managers, and that's the group we're targeting now, to think long term. And as opposed to buying today, it might be low and we hope it'll go up, and then we'll sell, and then we'll buy it low. And those are what traders do. We look for long-term strategic thinking, and the long-term trends are clear. Fossil fuel stocks have gone down. We believe they will go down further. And we do not look for our pension funds to be traded in risky, and do I say risky enough? Risky, highly speculative assets. Leave that to the day traders.
And I think another thing is looking at the number of bankruptcies in this industry. You'd have to know which companies are going to make it through and which companies aren't. And I don't think anybody's that smart right now.
I think that's a great point that Gina just made, is that the idea of going through the 34 fracking companies that we follow and the 5 oil majors and every oil company out there, and some produce only natural gas and some produce oil and gas. It is really, really complicated. How much debt do each of them have? How close are they to bankruptcy? That's again, something that we don't expect pension fund managers to do.
These are some of the most conservative investors on the planet. That's why they keep rejecting our common sense calls to divest. And now we're going to ask them, or they're going to tell us that they're going to be day traders. No, I mean, if you're a day trader with a high risk appetite, trading in fossil fuel futures is for you. But as a pension fund trustee, that's completely the wrong game. So thank you so much for that question and those answers. Patrick, what's next?
Sure. Again, I've combined a couple of questions into one to save some time. And that is, it sounds like this movement has a lot of momentum right now. What are some examples of pension funds, either in North America or around the world, that have divested from fossil fuels or otherwise taken urgent action on climate change? And what is the next big win most likely to take place in the pension area?
Well, I'd like to punt to Hridesh, but I want to point out that we did cross a very significant finish line with New York City. That campaign was ongoing for a really long time, and New York City is the heartbeat of the financial markets. And once they divested in 2018, that brought London along. So Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, then couldn't basically put off joining the movement any longer. So he committed to divest. And then that fall of 2018, London, New York City, and C40 came together to form the Divest Invest Cities Forum, which is now working with cities around the world to divest. And there are tons of local victories, especially in the UK, of local authority pension schemes divested. I think there's close to 24 now, I'd have to check. But the movement is alive, it's growing. And it's no surprise that our peers in Europe are a little bit more advanced than we are.
Clara, did you want to mention the Norway pension fund, which is the largest in the world?
Kathy, take it away.
So Norway, as many of you know, is dependent on oil revenues for a big source of its national budget. And they opted last year to divest from many of their, not all of their oil and gas holdings, but most of the upstream. And they felt that they were simply too risky. So they felt these were highly speculative, highly risky assets that did not belong in their $1.1 trillion pension fund, either the largest in the world or the second largest in the world. And I think they have led the way on divestment. But many European insurance companies and pension funds have been nearly as vigorous as they have in divesting.
Great point. When the world's biggest sovereign wealth fund, dependent on oil for its revenues, decides it's time to get out, we're definitely onto something.
And how about the University of California decided, their pension system decided from a financial standpoint, again, it was not an environmental decision, it was not a moral decision. They said, we're smarter as a financial institution, and we're stronger, and we have less risk if we get out of our fossil fuel stocks.
Absolutely, and it wasn't just one UC school, it was the whole University of California system. And Jagdeep Singh, or the CIO, he wrote a phenomenal, Jagdeep Bakker wrote a phenomenal op-ed in the LA Times that talks about the fact that it was the financial case that pushed them over the line. All right, Senator Allen has to jump. Are you still there? Could you just say a quick closing for us?
I just, it's an honor to be on this great panel with so many good people, and just keep fighting, keep fighting. This is such a worthy cause, such an existential cause. So thank you everybody for your constant advocacy. And I guess my one little comment is, legislators are people too, like they want to do the right thing. They're also subject to a lot of political pressures. So, it's always good to have a little bit of sugar and a little bit of vinegar in everything you do, right? I mean, remember that they're people. I like the comment that was made earlier, remembering the fact that a lot of these board members are fiduciaries, but they're oftentimes, as you mentioned, getting paid a lot less than they could be getting in the private sector. The same thing goes for people in politics. And then they end up becoming, I think, pressured by people who are paid a lot of money to lobby them on behalf of big industries, right? I mean, in Sacramento, at least, we've got a beautiful street filled with tall, high-rise glass buildings that are just chock full of lobbyists. And there's a reason why they get as much money as they get, and it's because they're influential. But I think in the end of the day, a lot of these legislators just you've got to counterbalance that pressure with people pressure, and that means building relationships in their districts, getting involved with their campaigns, but also showing up at town halls and asking them tough questions and engaging, becoming friends with their staffs, becoming friends with the members. Remember these are human beings, and yes, they're part of this big crazy machine, but but do your best to build relationships too. And I think I think it goes a long way.
And Senator Allen, keep building relationships with your peers in the state Senate, because we need all of you to do this. And you said sugar and vinegar. I like hot sauce personally, so I think we should also bring the heat.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Thanks for joining us.
All right, guys. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
All right.
Patrick, do we have any more in the queue?
Yeah, we have 4 or 5 more. I'm not sure how long you want to go with questions, but I can keep them coming.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention again, stick around in just a few minutes. We're going to close with a prayer from Dr. Maria, and we're also going to share some of the video content I mentioned earlier. And note that this is all being recorded, and we're going to post it on our respective websites going forward. So if you missed some of the great content here during this hour, we're going to have it available for you afterwards. So thanks so much for joining, Patrick. Let's just come finish out with a few more questions before we turn it over to Dr. Maria.
Sure, I have a question here. Not only do we need to divest from fossil fuels to tackle the climate crisis, but we also need to invest in climate solutions. So how can pension funds use their wealth to accelerate the transition to a climate-safe future?
I think that has been a real quandary for these large institutional investors, because a lot of the scale of renewables. Oh, sorry. I want to turn my camera on. The scale of renewables just isn't there for these large institutional investors to come in and invest in the same way that they invest in the energy sector with carbon. And so we're seeing pressure. We've got more money going into the area of renewables than we do in the area of new investments that are available. And so one of the comments that I got from one of the fiduciaries is, because of that, the returns, the dividends are not as high in that area as they are in other areas. And so there's going to have to be a little period of growth and new money going into renewables to grow that industry before it's really going to be able to take on the new investment dollars that are going to be needed to scale up to serve the whole world, but also available to serve these institutional investors well.
Thanks, Gina. And I don't know if Kathy, you wanted to comment. One of the other really cool things that's happening in Norway is the fact that because of your work and that of Tom Sanzillo, they're investing for the first time in direct renewable energy investments through their private equity funds. And for a long time, the pension funds have been, wary of renewable energy stuff because it's volatile and risky. But meanwhile, you can invest in a 25-year PPA, a power purchase agreement tied to a renewable energy, solar farm or a wind farm, and that's a guaranteed rate of return for investors. So I don't know if you wanted to just touch on the Norway experience, but we all know that that pensions manage trillions of assets, and we need to start mobilizing them not only out of the past but into the future.
Yeah, I think the first step is to focus on divestment, and then to ask your managers. Pension funds all pay a tremendous management fee to say, show me a fossil-free portfolio, and then show me a portfolio that tilts or has options to tilt toward new energy or renewable energy. And in fact, there's a lot of evidence that it's maybe perhaps difficult to deploy large amounts to individual solar projects or wind projects, but that's a market that's growing very, very rapidly. And those funds are now outperforming. In 2019, some of the renewable energy funds vastly outperformed the fossil fuel funds.
And the other thing sorry to jump in, but the other thing we need is activism on the large scale utilities like Xcel and other large scale utilities to accommodate the growth of renewables. It is a difficult thing because it dislocates their grid, it makes things a little less stable. So they need to deploy the technology to integrate these new renewable projects into the infrastructure.
And the good news are that the utilities that are doing that, NextEra and Xcel, are outperforming the market. Mm-hmm. So the forward-thinking utilities are actually doing better than the laggards. So good.
Yeah. And I want to call on all the pension campaigners around the country and in Canada to really adopt a divest, invest mindset. Because again, there's just too much money that's at stake that can be actually used to build the clean energy future we all know we need. So I just want to close now with a quick lightning round, 15 seconds or less from all of our panelists. Give us a nugget to leave us with. Stephen, we'll start with you.
Ooh, all right. One thing I'm going to end up spending the whole time thinking. I'll just say that when I started talking to pension fund trustees 4 or 5 years ago about fiduciary duty, we were fighting an uphill battle, and now we are going with gravity and the wind is at our backs.
Love it. Way to think on the fly. Sorry to put you on the spot. Rio, you're next.
All right, all I got to say is if any youth are watching, or if you know any youth, just let them know that youth have so much power, more than they realize, because in these board meetings, there's no youth there. There hasn't been for years, and it really shakes things up.
Thanks, Adam. And why are you fighting this fight for Morgan? You're on mute. You're on mute. Unmute.
Both my mic. This is the most important fight in the world, and it has been my entire life. And as soon as I realized that, I couldn't do anything else. But one thing I wanted to say was the climate movement has really grown. We've noticed that in the last couple of years, we've got huge energy and momentum all over the world. And a lot of people, they get fired up about climate and want to do something, and they're still short of ideas, practical things that they can actually reach out and do. And I really want to impress upon folks that talking to your pension fund is one of those really, really impactful things. It seems, maybe like it's a bit of a boring thing, but it's not. It's a huge action you can take, and every person can take it. So start there.
Amazing. All right, switching now to Bobby. Tell us how you're going to help galvanize your fellow pensioners and union members to divest para.
Well, I think it's just getting together and talking with your people, right? And relying on these experts that can give us good fodder to motivate us and make good arguments and bring the case, because you get into those board meetings and you're talking to the board president, the chief investment officer, and they have all these very complex and reasonable sounding arguments why divestment is impossible. And you have to just dig back in and figure out, no, wait a minute, we know the truth, we have the facts, we have all of the good arguments, and it's really up to us to keep pushing for the future that we want to see.
Amen. All right, thank you so much. And Randy, so sorry your slideshow didn't play, but like I said, you were so radiant, and I think it actually would have detracted to have your slides. So give us your last closing words.
Well, I'm just thinking of a couple of metaphors here, because I think we need to continue to push and push and push. And so I'm thinking about like pulling the rug out from under the oil industry, for example, and we're so close. So just keep pulling on that. Or if we're in an arm wrestle with them, it's like that moment where we're about to slam it down. So I just think the momentum is with us. And like Kathy was saying, the case for divestment is stronger than ever. And so keep the pressure up. We're going to win soon.
Thank you. And before we turn to our final closing prayer, Hridesh, let us know why the youth energy is so important, and give us a little shot in the arm.
Well, it's our futures that are at stake, and not only the future of my generation, but countless generations to come. That, again, the world is not ours to keep. We just hold on to it for future generations to have. So it truly is the fight of our lives and the fight of our planet's lives. But we're really happy and really excited that we are winning, and we're going to continue to win. So please, I implore you, whether you're youth, adult, pensioner, old or young, we need you in this fight, and there's a place for you in the climate movement.
Thank you. And that's a beautiful segue to Dr. Maria, who's going to lead us out in a closing prayer. But do stick around if you want to catch some great video content from our friends at Earth Guardians, and also our longer Climate Coalition for Climate Safe Pensions piece that we ran today during the national live stream. Dr. Maria?
Kashala, grandfathers, Unshi grandmothers, Unshimaka, grandmother earth, Miniwichoni, sacred water. We are so blessed. All our ancestors, the Comanche, the Kiowa, the Arapaho, the Lakota, the Diné, the Mashika that came through these lands in Colorado, and all the ancestors everywhere, not only in the US, but also in North America. We want to say, Wopilatanka, thank you. And we ask for your blessings for all these people who are fighting to take care of Grandmother Earth in the way you did before all the settlers came, before all the machinery came, before the fracking, before the oil, before the going into grandma's belly and taking out things that needed to stay underground. We ask that you please bless everyone who's working in this fight, all the people fighting for the pensions, for the divestment, all the climate activists who are trying to help raise awareness. We pray and ask for your guidance. We ask that you help protect them so that every footstep that they place on Grandmother Earth, every human being everywhere starts to remember that we are all related to all the living nations, to all living beings, to the Standstill Nation. Help us remember with every foot that we walk on that we show reverence to Grandmother Earth, because without her, we cannot exist. It is our responsibility to protect Grandmother Earth so that the next 49 generations have the right to swim in the water, have the right to eat, have the right to live and have bountiful food that is not poisoned. It is so important that we all join this together as one heartbeat so that we may all work together. And when we get tired of the fight, when we get tired of the pushing, when we get tired and distraught or despaired from the things that are happening that are not going in the way our hearts want them, we ask that you walk beside us on the right, walk beside us on the left, walk behind us when we are strong enough to lead, and when we cannot say which road to take, walk in front of us so that you can guide us. And when we're too tired to walk, lift us up and carry us until we have the strength to go, because it's going to be a long haul. And if we look back in time, it's really just a moment in time. So it's all a matter of what our frame of reference is. Nothing is impossible. We're all divinely guided. And we were not sent to Grandmother Earth, Unshimaka, to just survive. We were sent here to thrive. And all this is about thriving. All this divestment, the pensions, the climate change, it's all about how do we thrive as all living beings together, remembering that we all have the same rights to be alive. Aho, mitaki ase. Thank you everyone so much for everything you're doing. It's such a blessing and an honor to be on this panel with each and every one of you who are working so hard, and all your colleagues and all your relations and all your families who let you put in countless hours to do this and follow your passion. Aho, mitaki ase.
Thank you so much. Wow, thank you. Yeah, I mean, in this time of everyone struggling to put food on the table, keep their jobs, et cetera, the last thing that our hardworking Americans need is to worry about their pensions. And, you know, I think it's really important too, that as we talk about thriving and thriving for all of us, we can't forget about the oil workers and the other workers in the fossil fuel industry. This is not a time to attack them. This is a time to talk about the future. This is the time to talk about retraining our workers to thrive in the clean energy future. That's our obligation too. So as we go out and we fight the fossil fuel industry, let's not mistake that as a fight against our workers. Thank you to the panelists. You guys are unbelievable. We're going to post this content online, like I mentioned. Feel free to slice and dice for your own purposes. We're all going to need to keep pushing this. And I think we really had a robust conversation that you know, will further this dialogue. So again, thank you so much. And if you have to sign off, totally understand. But if you can, stick around. We've got a great video from the Earth Guardians that Rio and his friends have put together for us to help break down some of these ideas in a way that young people can get behind and get really excited about. So over to you, Vanessa, to cue up that video. And again, don't forget to take action. United States, if you're in the US, log into climatesafepensions.org, sign our petition. And in Canada, shiftaction.ca, and together we can win this fight. So thank you all so much for being here. I look forward to the next time, and have a beautiful weekend. I'm personally taking tomorrow off, so a weekend for me. I don't know about you, but enjoy it no matter what. Take care.
We are the Earth Guardians Bay Area crew and your first apocalypse. We're a group of young activists helping to save our future from the climate emergency.
We saw how fast everyday people around the world can work together when the scientists told us about the dangers of the coronavirus.
We know we have the same power to work together to make a just and healthy future for all.
Mother Nature, indigenous leaders, frontline communities, and climate scientists have been screaming out that we need to leave oil in the ground.
Adults in powerful positions have not been listening. Instead, they are investing a ton of money in the fossil fuel industry.
As long as these companies keep getting money, they're going to use it to keep looking for oil so they can drill for it.
Even during this pandemic, while people don't even have enough money to feed their families, and hospitals don't have the equipment they need, governments are still giving fossil fuel companies big money along with permission to frack and drill for more oil.
We've learned about a super important action that can stop this. It's called divestment. So what is divestment? It's when a person or organization takes money out of certain types of banks, companies, and funds. Divestment can take power away from the industries that are causing really big harm. Divestment frees up money to be invested in solutions, like green jobs.
Now be careful. Some adults say that by investing in these companies, we will own a portion of them and have a say that can get them to change their ways. It's called the engagement strategy.
Engagement only works when you're trying to make smaller changes within a company, not when you need to change everything about that company. We have to stop them.
Now you might wonder how we kids learned about divestment and all this money stuff. In California, we found out that most of our teachers have no idea that more than $6 billion of their retirement money is being invested in fossil fuel companies right now.
The organization that decides where to invest our teachers' money is called CalSTRS. Once we found out, we decided to miss school so we could go to every one of their board meetings until they divest. Youth and teachers fill up the boardroom and give powerful testimony, but they censor the youth and say that we are too young to be included in their public record.
We keep trying to talk with them, but they say they want to engage with the fossil fuel companies. Those board members don't have to live with the consequences like we will. So we have been staging different disruptions to let them know that they must divest. We did a die-in just outside their headquarters. We danced in the middle of their meeting. We got media attention by covering ourselves in fake oil. But still, they say no to divesting.
It's extremely weird because over the last 10 years, fossil fuel companies have actually been losing money. Our teachers would have been making more money if CalSTRS wasn't invested in instruction. So we got more students to tell their teachers. When those teachers find out, they are really upset and join us in demanding CalSTRS divest.
As the world turns to renewable sources, fossil fuel investments are going to be worth less and less. But the fossil fuel companies are really good at pretending like they will be part of the solution, even though they're screwing everything up. This is called greenwashing.
Like when a fossil fuel company says they are working really hard on creating sustainable energy solutions like developing more wind turbines and solar panels, even if only 1% of their money is being used to do it.
Also, lots of other adults don't know that their money is supporting fossil fuels too. In places like banks, universities, entire cities, places of worship, the list goes on and on. We need your help letting them know.
This wasn't what we wanted to do with our childhood, but the grown-ups have given us no choice. Together we can do this. Will you join us?
Start by asking adults in your life if they know if their investments and banks are fossil-free. Visit our website to learn how you can demand divestment and get people around you organized.
We're here to help each other.
That was so awesome.
Outside of Rochester, New York.
Do you want to?
Yeah, that was amazing. And I also wanted to highlight something that was just said in the video, which is that not only do investors have to stop investing in fossil fuels, Banks have got to stop giving them loans, and insurance companies have got to stop insuring them. So you can also check out stopthemoneypipeline.org, which is a campaign that brings those three threads together. Investors, banks, and insurers have got to stop funding our climate future. So check out stopthemoneypipeline.org. And we're going to close with last video. Stick around if you can. This just highlights some of the other great work that's going on around the country and in Canada. Again, this is a growing, thriving coalition that's only going to get bigger as we go forward, fueled by the power of youth and elders alike. Thanks all.
Senior in high school, just outside of Rochester, New York, and I'm speaking to you while in quarantine. Dear New York State legislators, it is time to sponsor the Fossil Fuel Divestment Act.
Because it will save you lots and lots of money. The fossil fuel industry for the last decade has been a way to lose money. New York State has lost a lot already.
I'm a mother and a grandmother and a retiree from the state of New York. I'm a proud union member, and we don't want to see our hard-earned pension money go to investments in fossil fuels.
If New York State's plan is to reduce its dependence on fossil fuels, why is the retirement fund betting against us?
My name is Elena, and I'm a high school student in New York City. I'm currently in quarantine in my apartment in Brooklyn, and I'm filming this to remind you that it is time to invest in a green future that all of us can live with. It is time for you to step up and be the climate leaders that we all need you to be.
It's time to stop financing the world's destruction by investing in the world's biggest polluters.
It is time for us to stop risking our pensions by investing in a fossil fuel industry that has cost this pension fund billions of dollars.
My name is Claire Vondrich, and this is my pup Amethyst, or Amy. We're both taking a little break from quarantine here in Great Falls Park, Virginia, to announce a super exciting new push for a fossil-free world. Today, campaigners from around the United States and Canada are coming together behind a coalition for climate-safe pensions. Pension funds around the world control over $46 trillion in assets. That's a lot of money. And currently, because of old school investment practices, they're heavily invested in the fossil fuel industries that are burning a hole in the planet, and also in the pensions of hardworking Americans and Canadians. We know that the fossil fuel industry has been underperforming and volatile for over a decade, a losing bet for pensioners. We know that the big funds in New York State and California have already lost billions of dollars for their workers because of their investments in fossil fuels. This has got to stop. That's why youth and elders are uniting today behind the Coalition for Climate-Safe Pensions.
I'm Lindsay, and I'm a rare millennial who's lucky enough to have a pension. I'm a member of the 6th largest pension fund in Canada, which manages over $100 billion in assets. I want to live in a world that is just and resilient to the shocks of climate change and other emergencies that are already coming our way. And yet my pension is investing my money in fossil fuel companies who are trampling on Indigenous rights and steering the world in the wrong direction. Not only that, but it's a terrible investment. Even the Bank of Canada is saying that investors need to take environmental factors into account. So why aren't my pension fund managers listening? Shift is empowering me and thousands of other Canadians to call on their pension funds to protect our pensions and invest in clean energy.
These very same companies that are conducting the fracking and oil and gas development here in our state, right next to schools and neighborhoods, are the same companies that public employees and teachers are investing in through their pensions. A lot of people don't know that an average pension fund in the United States invests 6 to 7% in fossil fuel companies. What gets me really excited about fossil fuel divestment work is the potential to reinvest our money in solutions and in where we want to be going for our future. So here in Colorado, the city of Denver divested its general funds from fossil fuels in 2019, and they immediately took that money and reinvested it in the local green and clean energy economy. We will continue to work on this, and we will continue to call on PARA to divest from fossil fuels, and we know that we're part of a growing movement.
We are 350 Austin.
I personally got involved due to my work in commercial solar project financing and system design. We wrote a divestment report in 2017 tailored to the City of Austin employee retirement system, and they reciprocated with a 40% reduction in their fossil fuel holdings. In addition, we prepared a divestment white paper containing financial arguments tailored for investment boards for anyone to present. There is a collective awareness that has formed, and the respectful nature will only grow post this pandemic, and I'm excited to be continuing this work.
I had a chance this Earth Week to sit down with some of the leading campaigners in the space. Some of them are really young, ranging from 13 to 17, and others got a few more years under their belt. Here I'm going to share with you a few pieces of our conversation. I sat down with Anna Siegel from Maine. I sat down with Hridesh Singh from New York, Lynn Nittler from California, and Lolita Jackson from New York City. Take a listen and stay tuned. We'll have some tips on how to get involved at the end of the segment. Thank you. Having the youth energy injected into this moment at this time couldn't be more important. So I'm really grateful to Hridesh and Anna for being here. And I'd like to just start with you two. Why, as young climate leaders, are you concerned about pensions?
Well, actually, surprisingly, the divestment campaign that I've been working on with my peers to divest New York has been perhaps the most engaging and inspiring campaign I've actually been a part of.
Me, I am very legislatively focused and very electorally focused. I'm always thinking, what bills can we pass? What can we get done? What can we push forward? And how can we get that signed off? But with divestment, I've been realizing that fighting fracking and making solar deals and passing Green New Deal bills doesn't make a substantial shift. The coal and oil industry still has its current lobbying powers with our politicians. We cannot take on the political legislative system without first taking on the financial system.
Thanks so much. Great to have you here. Lolita Jackson, Special Advisor to New York City on climate.
And I am the co-lead, or we are the co-lead with the City of London of the C4 Divest Invest Forum, which contains 14 cities around the world, where we walk them through different ways of thinking about divestment and investing in climate solutions. And I'm also personally interested in the topic because I'm actually a member of NYSERD, which is the New York City Employee Retirement Fund. And I look young, but I'm actually 53. So I will be collecting in only 10 short years.
So I'd like to pivot now to Lynn, who's actually a pensioner with the California State Teachers Retirement Board.
Fossil Free California is active. We have two big pension plans in Sacramento. I'm very near to Sacramento. So we have the public employees one, slightly larger, and the CalSTRS one, which is very big too.
I've been very inspired by this campaign, and the fact that we're really close to the finish line here in New York State is very, very motivating and very energizing.
Thank you so much. And now while we're on that point of being almost across the finish line in New York State, we have to recognize here that we did cross the finish line with New York City, another very significant pool of capital. At the time, it was around almost $200 billion, and maybe a little bit less since the recent stock market crash. But I'd like to turn it to Lolita and ask, how did you guys bring this about? Why did your mayor and why did you, as one of the key architects of the decision, decide this was a priority? And how did you respond to skeptics, especially financial experts, the very serious guys in the room that said divestment is risky, divestment is actually going to impact and undercut our fiduciary duty to protect long-term wealth for our pensioners? What were some of the obstacles you faced and how did you come around and win?
Well, the easiest thing to do really is to show the fiscal case for why investing in fossil fuels just didn't make sense from a financial standpoint. So an institution called Mercer did a study for our pension board, and they found that it just was not sensible to continue to invest in this as an asset. And some of our trustees, in particular from the labor movement, were really moved by that. And also the opportunity to be involved in sustainable investments and sustainable solutions is also something that weighed significantly for New York City. So we actually had those two decisions not too far apart to not only get out of fossil fuels, but start investing in a sustainable future that includes a just transition in it. We have a toolkit that we've come out with that was released in January of this year that's available to anyone listening here. It really walks cities through a checklist of things that you have to think about. Working with advocates, and Clara, you and I have worked together directly on this work. how to politically get the decision made. If you don't control your city's pension or your state's pension, how you can use tools and techniques to actually persuade those folks to do that. So it really walks you through, as a city person, the steps that you need to take and think about when you're trying to make this decision.
How do you think Comptroller Tom DiNapoli, the sole trustee of the New York State Pension Fund, could help support a Green New Deal for New York State?
Public pensions are a huge asset pool throughout the world. New York State Common Retirement Fund alone has about $210 billion worth of assets, with about $12 billion invested in the fossil fuel industry. By using those assets to invest in clean energy infrastructure and clean, green, high-paying jobs right here in New York State, it's not only a boon for pensioners and our future, but a boon for the local New York State economy, which is why I'm pretty hopeful that as we divest away from the fossil fuel industry, we can reinvest and use those same assets to invest in a clean energy economy that works for us all.
Look at the fact now that the price of oil is below $30 a barrel, and it's just going to keep going down. So I think, unfortunately, in this time of COVID, the case makes itself. If you stay in fossil fuels, that demand's not coming back.
I am really just, struck emotionally by this idea that so many workers are struggling right now, and the last thing they need to worry about in the midst of this crisis is their nest eggs going up in smoke.
If the Common Retirement Fund divested about a decade earlier, it would be about $22.2 billion richer than it is today. And this was before the coronavirus crash. So, and that total accounts for about $20,000 per pensioner. So this issue that we're advocating for, advocating against, it has a labor component, it has a youth component, there's a fiduciary duty component, there's a financial duty component, and it helps to create a clean energy economy that works for us all. So by advocating for divestment, you're advocating to a vast swath of different interest groups, which is why the divestment movement has been growing rapidly each and every year since the first divestment campaign back in Swarthmore back in 2010.
I want to shift now to a really important question that I think state pension and city pension campaigns have to grapple with. And this is generating support by pensioners themselves, most of whom are union members.
And to bring together elders and youth and put both of our commitments together and then work forward from there is very powerful. So I think this is a turning point moment.
My name is Melissa Wenzel, and I'm a Sustainability Administrator for the state of Minnesota. I'm also a local union steward and a volunteer with 350 Minnesota. I've led initiatives to support divestment research and got involved with this because I take the topic of climate change seriously, and I know that these investments are risky and volatile. I look forward to the day where we can say that our pensions are free from fossil fuel investments. What's awesome is that not only are more of our union members aware of this topic, they support it. The support is more common than you think.
Hi, I'm Bob Schroeder with 350 Juneau in Juneau, Alaska. Behind me is the Mendenhall Glacier, which has been retreating really rapidly, and it's part of why I'm involved in climate change. Our divestment campaign focuses on the Alaska Permanent Fund and the Retirement Benefit Board, which together manage $100 billion in state funds that belong to the workers of Alaska. What our campaign does is to raise the question of whether you make any money by investing in oil stocks and fossil fuel industries, and we hope to shut this down.
We are the Divest New Jersey Coalition, which is led by 350 NJ Rockland. We started our campaign in September 2018 to persuade the New Jersey State Investment Council, who oversees the New Jersey public pension, to divest from fossil fuels. We protest, we sing, we chant, and testify at every single one of the council's bi-monthly meetings in Trenton. We are also gaining momentum, extending our campaign into the labor movement.
We need to build a better future, and we need to start right now.
Signal, Miranda Yuntas, what's the name of our game? Hi, I'm Miranda, a
coordinator at Shift Action for Pension Wealth and Planet Health in Toronto or Toronto, Canada. At Shift, we believe that it's time for pension funds to invest in climate solutions now. The real power of our work comes from working with pension holders themselves.
Hi, my name is Kim Fry, and I'm an elementary school teacher in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I care about my students, and I care about my own children. I want them to have a bright future, and that is why I have worked with other teachers for many years to call on the Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, my pension plan, to divest its holdings from fossil fuels.
Hi, my name is Natasha. I'm an Ontario teacher. I'm failing my students if I cannot prepare them for the world that they will inherit. And they are the real reason that I wish to push my pension plan to divest from fossil fuels.
Did you know that your teachers have $6 billion invested in fossil fuels, and most of them don't even know it? So this fall, your teacher has homework. They need to watch this video and then go tell CalSTRS to divest their pension from fossil fuels.
CalSTRS is investing our pensions in fossil fuels and losing us money.
And wrecking the future for our students.
And for us. CalSTRS needs to divest from fossil fuels for financial as well as moral reasons. CTA needs to change its position and support CalSTRS divestment.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Warheit with Fossil Free California. We're a proud member of the North American Coalition of Climate-Safe Pension Campaigns. Please join us and let's move our money out of fossil fuels and into a just green recovery. Visit climatesafepensions.org to sign the petition and learn how you can get involved in a campaign near you. And join us tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. We're going to have a live discussion with Clara and some special guests who can answer all of your questions. Thank you.
All right, you heard it here first. The Coalition for Climate Safe Pensions is up and running. Thank you so much to all of our partners and all of the youth organizers around the country that are getting fired up. Who said pensions aren't sexy? You can tell now that this is the next front in the climate finance campaign. We have amazing directed networks already challenging insurers and asset managers like BlackRock, but now it's time to go after the massive trillions of dollars in our public pensions. So join us, climatesafepensions.org, and sign the petition, and we'll keep you up to date with ways to get involved going forward. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful evening, and I'll catch you on the flip side.